Yesterday, the MTA announced that the 63rd Street reconstruction project was completed and will reopen on Monday, April 1st. Although this was done on time and on budget, which is awesome, the F&M swap will not be made permanent. That is bad. So you all might be thinking, are we going to end our initiative of swapping the F&M? To which I answer, absolutely not. If there is one thing I learned after studying the New York City subway for well over a decade, it is that nothing is consistent and nothing is final. For example, when the 7 Express train was reinstated in 1989, it skipped Woodside 61st Street. The official reasoning was that it would make the 33rd Street merge more unreliable. But because of riders and politicians complaining nonstop for 3 years, Woodside became a permanent stop on the Express in 1992. I can go on and on, from when the IBX was trashed by the MTA for decades, only for it to be embraced, to when the MTA called platform screen doors unfeasible, only for them to embrace it 2 years later. But you get the point. Nothing is final, and it ain't over. Speaking of the MTA, even they admit that the F&M swap would be much better and won't overcrowd 53rd Street. According to a 1989 EIS report for the 63rd Street connector, without the project, the following will happen. Crowding on the E would be at a factor of 1.392. Crowding on the F would be at a factor of 1.216. 7.1 million hours annually will be traveled in uncomfortable conditions. With the current service patterns, crowding on the E would be at a factor of 1.204. Crowding on the F will be at a factor of 1.139. Crowding on the V would be at a factor of 0.451. 2.2 million hours annually will be traveled in uncomfortable conditions, and will save 0.01 transfers per trip. With the F&M swap, crowding on the E would be at a factor of 1.173. Crowding on the F would be at a factor of 0.864. Crowding on the V would be at a factor of 0.716. 1.6 million hours will be traveled in uncomfortable conditions, and will save 0.02 transfers per trip. As you can see here, under the F&M swap, train loads will be more balanced. The F will be significantly less crowded, both under the current service patterns and prior to 2001. The V, or now the M train, will see more use, but will still be far from overcrowded. This means the 63rd Street Tunnel users will actually see less overcrowding. Before, they were stuck with the F, running with crowds of 1.139. With the swap, it will be 0.716, a decrease of 37%. Also, crowds along 53rd Street will decrease, both from current service patterns and prior to 2001. The F&M swap will reduce uncomfortable crowding by about 27% from current service patterns, and possibly more thanks to the increase of trains that can be scheduled because of CBTC. The F&M swap will reduce uncomfortable crowding by a whopping 77% from pre-2001 ridership, which means no insane overcrowding is going to occur because of the F&M swap. Since people like express trains, this means that people will crowd onto the next express, not the next train. This increases crowds at stations along 53rd Street. But by having the F, another express, go on 53rd, people are encouraged to take the next train, helping to decrease crowds at stations like Lexington Avenue, 53rd Street. This means that we are talking about a decrease of crowding along 53rd, not an increase. Finally, more one-seat rides will be created under the F&M swap. The F&M swap will save 0.02 transfers per trip, and the current service pattern only saves 0.01 transfers per trip. This is because 53rd Street is the preferred service, and 63rd Street doesn't even register as a top 50 destination. This means that excessively interlining your services does not mean you create the most one-seat rides. Sometimes, de-interlining actually creates more one-seat rides. Now, I know that this is from 1989, but things have barely changed. 53rd Street is still the preferred service. The E and M loads are still heavily imbalanced, and people still transfer to the Express the first moment they get. So, let's get things moving. We already reached out to dozens of politicians and will do everything in our power to swap the F&M. But we can't do it without you and would like your help. Please sign the petition in the description box below. Share the petition. And if you'd like to help, email us.